Okay, what we have here is a Arsenal. It's a SAM7 and a side folder. We bought this gun used, so we're kind of going through it before we actually take it to the range, just to make sure everything looks okay. When I looked at the rails, they don't look like that they have been, this thing's been used a lot. I can see some wear on the hammer. Right here on the hammer, you can see that the gun's been fired. But when you look at the rails are unused or unscathed. The barrel looked really good. I looked at the lands of the rifling in the barrel and the chamber. That all looks well. It's chrome plated on these Arsenals. One other thing I did notice was the muzzle brake was kind of loose right here at the fit between the muzzle and the threads on it, and I determined that if I removed a little bit of material from the rear of the muzzle, basically what I did is I just lapped it. It didn't take much. It was out about a quarter of a turn from full lockup against the face of the front sight here. So I took off, I think it was about 14 thousandths, just lapping the rear face of the muzzle until the timing when the muzzle was fully tight engaged the pin. So that worked out well, but I don't know why Arsenal doesn't do that from the get-go. The other thing I noticed is there was a little bit of click. I could feel some click play on the upper hand grip here that goes over the gas tube. It's just because when this cam gets engaged or locked against it, there wasn't. Looked like maybe there was too much material was removed from this top angle here, which engages or locks the gas tube in, and it caused a little bit of up and down movement, which is kind of irritating on a $1,400 rifle. So that I noticed. Another thing I noticed is this front rivet for the optic mount had a bucktail on it, and the bucktail was okay, but it had sharp edges on it, and it being that I bought it used, I got some magazines with it. It was chewing up some of the magazines. So that's another thing from Arsenal. It's supposed to be the cream of the crop. I don't know why that was like that. I took a file to it, cleaned that up, kind of buffed it out a little bit, the bucktail, so that the magazine doesn't actually touch it anymore. But again, from Arsenal, brand new, what I'm talking about is there's a rivet bucktail in there. Maybe if I flip it over the other way, that is actually can touch a magazine. Let me try and get this flipped over. Alright, so there it is. And there's the bucktail I'm talking about. It had sharp edges on it, and it was equal with the magazine well, I guess you could say, where it would actually touch the side of the magazines and cause wear on them. Shouldn't have been that way. So I noticed that. And the other thing that kind of throws me for a loop, you look on YouTube, guys say that this Arsenal is the best of the best for production made. I think if you want, I suppose if you want first class AKs, Rifle Dynamics probably would be the place to go. But Arsenal's supposed to be pretty good stuff. And the paint on this thing is just, to me it looks like black lacquer. Like they took a rattle can and just shot it with some black lacquer out of the rattle can, and here you go. So that, you know, again, it's a $1,400 rifle. You think that they'd do something a little bit better than a rattle can paint job on it. But yeah, that's just another thing. So when I look at fit and finish, I hear everybody talk about fit and finish on these arsenals, it being top of the line. I'm not sold on that 100%. It's my understanding, and like I say, this gun's been shot, so I'm looking at the wear patterns on the inside, and like what I see on the hammer, that's not alarming. Depending upon how much it's been shot, but you know, that little bit of wear there, it would be nice if it wasn't, but it's there. The other thing is, you know, the bolt lockup lugs look fantastic on this. That's what convinced me to buy it, is when I looked at the lockup lugs on this bolt. Let's see if I can get close in on this thing. They really nice wear on that. And when I look at the mating surface of where the lockup lugs tie in against, it looked pretty good. There's one shiny spot there, but other than that, the lockup lugs look really good. One thing that did kind of stand out to me was this, let's see if I can get this stick here. On the bolt where the firing pin, lockup pin goes, there's a hole drilled down from the top on the bolt, and I can see that it kind of broke through right here on the bolt. That's the groove that the ejector rides in, and the firing pin hole that was drilled through the bolt appears just to slightly break through into that groove a little bit, which again, they're supposed to be the top of the line. You would think better, that they could do a better job. One thing I gotta say, our Century C39V2, and I did a video on it where I put a go gauge in there and tried to lock the Century up with a go gauge, and it would not close. This rifle closes on a go gauge, and it does not close on a no-go gauge. So all of that is a good sign. But there's these other issues. So fit and finish, I've seen guys talk about these things. They give Arsenal real high marks on fit and finish. Not so sure. Alright, I'm going to try and get this thing put together, and we'll see where it goes. Oh, there was one other area I wanted to show you, and that was on the recoil spring, right there at the base. Now, right here I saw that it was hitting the carrier, so that wasn't a good sign. So I took the carrier and I put a little bit of a relief on the carrier so that the recoil spring would not interfere or hit right there. So like I say, let me get some of the stuff back together, and we'll continue on. So this is the area I was talking about on the carrier that I put a little bit of a relief in. That area was interfering with the recoil spring and causing wear right here on the rear of the recoil spring. Also the ducktail on the carrier, it does show a little bit of wear. Nothing major, but it does show a little bit of wear from pushing back on the hammer. The other thing I noticed, and I thought that the carriers and bolts were made of forged steel, and when I ground that out on this carrier, on this Arsenal rifle, I realized that this carrier is actually made of cast. Now, I don't know if it's cast steel or cast iron, but it's cast. And I was watching on YouTube, I saw the Texas Gunsmith. I think that's what he goes by. He also talked about putting a slight relief on the bolt right here, and also on this back part of the bolt. And that relief is so that the bolt doesn't interfere with the ejector. As the bolt would go by the ejector, you could see it on the rifle. You could see the wear, and these small chamfers aid in when the bolt goes by. It self-aligns with that ejector. And when I filed that, I hand filed them. I used an emery board file, whatever. I think these things are diamond coated, but this is what I used, and just, you know, by hand, kind of put a little bit of a contour on the end so that when it goes by the ejector, it you know, self-aligns. So when I did that, I noticed the bolt, it's not like super hard material. Matter of fact, I kind of think it is cast. And when you look at the carrier up in this area, you can see, see if I can get in on that, some slight wear in two spots, up here in the front and right here. Once again, I don't think this has been fired a lot. When I look on the inside where the bolt rides, it almost looks like it's a lap finish in there. But there's a lot of play between the bolt, and I mean, that thing moves quite a bit. And again, this is an Arsenal, so this is supposed to be the best of the best when it comes to production guns. And these are just things I noticed on them that you know, you wish that Arsenal would have done a little bit better. Now, I'll tell you one thing, Arsenal, like I say, it closes on a go gauge. That's something that the Century C39V2 did not do. I sent it back. I have yet to check that rifle. But I did send it back. Supposedly, the paperwork that came back with the Century says that it was within tolerance. This rifle does close on a go gauge, and it does not close on a no-go gauge. So that's, you know, at least Arsenal knows how to fit the rifle and bolt together. I'm not so sure that Century knows how to do that. But fit and finish wise, Century's got the fluff and buff. The outside looks real nice, but you should be able to close on a go gauge, like I say, and because you can't, we're going to give the heads up to Arsenal for the ability to at least, you know how to put a rifle together. When it comes to fluff and buff, though, I got to say that Century, I mean, even the magwell on that thing has got a nice bevel on it. They did a nice job on the looks of it. Just wish that they would have finished up with whatever materials they were supposed to use for the carrier and a bolt. There's some questions on the Century lockup lugs on whether, you know, that's going to hold up. This one here is supposedly a forged receiver. This is a milled receiver, and it's supposed to be forged prior to them machining it. So they take, you know, some hot roll material, and then they run it through a forging process, and then they actually machine it all out. And we'll get this rifle together, and we'll get it to the range and see how she performs. I noticed on the bolt that the face of the bolt had some wear on it. So, and once again, this is a relatively, it's a new gun, to me, and I bought it used, but not a lot of rounds been through it. But I did notice some wear down here, which kind of, I don't know, it just didn't look normal. So I took some 600 grit wetter dry paper and lubed it up with some mineral spirits, and I lapped the face of the bolt so that I got 90% of that wear out. So if it continues to wear, I'll see it and maybe can address, you know, where it's coming from. When I did lap this bolt, it's not hard material. It's not, you know, I always thought these things were like super hard, but it's not. This bolt is, it almost feels like cast iron. So I don't know if it's cast steel or cast iron, but it kind of, the way it feels to me, it feels like a cast iron. So I'm going to reassemble the bolt once again, and we'll try and get this thing together. I do have that Century, it did come back now, so I'm going to maybe open that up and put some of that in this video. We'll see what the wear patterns look like inside that Century's C39V2. Supposedly the factory put 90 rounds through it. So we'll take a look at it, see if they sent it back clean or dirty, or what the wear patterns look like. And maybe we'll do a comparison between these two rifles. The Century Arms out of the box, because it's been returned from Century Arms. So this is a C39V2. And we were looking at the Arsenal SAM7SF. So this is kind of like the same type gun. It's got a folding stock, but this is an American made. I have to say, when you compare the two side by side, hands down, Century Arms has better fit and finish. I was surprised. I remember when I bought the Century first, and I remember one of the clerks in the store telling me by far Arsenal would be better fit and finish. They didn't have any Arsenals in the store at the time, but I've got both of them sitting here and comparing them side by side. Hands down, Century on fit and finish, way over the Arsenal. The Arsenals are a Bulgarian-made military rifle. Evidently, what you're getting is made for the military, and nowhere near the fit and finish that this thing's got. Now, Century's notorious for, on this rifle, the metallurgy is not that good. Now that's where Arsenal, and you know, that's kind of what counts, but that's where Arsenal's got them. It's yet to be seen. This is a new rifle, and I sent it back to Century because I put a go gauge in it, and I tried to close the action, and it would not close. Now, I did the same check with the Arsenal. Go gauge, it's a SAMI go gauge, action closes, and then with a no-go gauge, the action does not close. So this is just back from Century. Supposedly, in the paperwork, they state that the head spacing is correct. So we're going to see. But I have to say, from the outside of it, looking at the gun itself, Century's got a better fit and finish. Now, I did run a patch through this gun. Supposedly it's been fired. They pushed 90 rounds through it. The patch is pretty clean, and when I look inside the gun and the action, everything is looking pretty clean. So let me get this thing opened up, and maybe we'll get some gauges out and see what happens. Okay, I have to say the gun looks really clean, almost like it hasn't been shot, or they did just a fantastic job of cleaning it. Don't see, you know, any markings that anywhere. I did. There is a that's a go gauge in there. That's a SAMI go gauge, and when I go to close that in the action, it still will not close. So the rifle came back and they said the headspace is correct, and it will not close on a go gauge. So there you have the Century Arms. I guess that's the difference between Century Arms and the Arsenal, is when they fit a rifle, they fit it accordingly, so that at least the go gauge will, you know, the action will close on a go gauge, where Century doesn't know how to fit the gun, I guess. So, but when you look at fit and finish, Century is outstanding. Now, suppose, you know, I hate to say that they're not telling the truth, but they say they put 90 rounds through this thing. And if they did a really nice job of cleaning it up, because it looks really, really clean. Now, I have to say, I took the muzzle brake off, and the muzzle, the end of the muzzle was clean, and when I took it off, I did see some carbon buildup on the rifle, on the crown. So you know, and that's another thing. Even on this Century Arms, this muzzle brake, there's a slight little bit of wiggle in it, but not much. That the one on the Arsenal, holy smokes, it was just, you know, it was really loose. That's why I ended up lapping the rear on the Arsenal muzzle brake so that it would seat up against the front sight, because it was just slopping around so much. It was terrible. And this here is, you know, it's got a little, I could feel a little bit of slop in it, but not much compared to what that Arsenal had. So once again, you know, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. Fit and finish goes to Century. Actual function checks go to Arsenal. I just wanted to show you the deal with the go gauge, and actually that it does not fit. One of the other things I wanted to show too was this is the bolt, and on the back side of the bolt, so here's the locking lug. So this would be the right side locking lug, and I can see, you know, it's starting to dig in a little bit right there, and not hardly anywhere. So if they fired this 90 times, there's basically zero wear, and it didn't polish out the divots that were created by this thing trying to lock up. So that's the divots right there that I'm talking about, and this would be the left locking lug. Also, I had put some, this is a non-metallic never sees, so I put that inside there, and it's still there. So if they cleaned it, they left the never sees in there after firing it. But when you look at this thing, you know, you can see where it's been running across the hammer, but I think that's mostly from hand cycle. She's pretty much spotless the way I sent it to him. This is a MIM part, so this is some of the other differences between the Century and the Arsenal. Arsenal, they use it appears to be a cast part, and this here is a MIM part. So in the Arsenal, they must do sand castings for parts like this, and so it's either a cast iron or a steel casting of this part. Where this, I could definitely see the MIM. This is definitely a MIM part. So, you know, a part like this, that's not a big deal. The interesting thing would be the bolt and carrier. Now, on the Arsenal, the carrier was cast iron. I believe it's cast iron or cast steel. I got a feeling this is the same thing. It's either cast iron or cast steel. Looks like, and the bolt So, like I say, we got to give this guy a call, or we can't call him, but at least email him and tell him what we still have, and ask him, did they do anything, or did they actually fire this thing 90 times, or what's the case, what's the story is. But anyhow, there's a little update on this C39V2 by Century. And when you look at the upper slide here, the gun, you have to say, they do a very nice job at machining out this receiver. Hands down, looks a heck of a lot better than the Arsenal. But you can't get a go gauge to close in it. Where the Arsenal, at least they know how to fit a rifle together. Alright, that's it for now. It is in my own hands here. Basically what I did is took the locking lugs. This is a triangle stone, it's an India stone. And just kind of slowly been working away at the locking lugs. This is the go gauge. And you can see now the action will close on a go gauge. It's snug, but it does close. Before, you couldn't get it to close at all. I've seen Texas Gunsmith talk about this, where he gets up to it and he likes to see pressure. And there's that pressure to get those locking lugs to come in. Now what I also did was I took a magic marker. I put it on the locking lugs. So let's take a look and see what we got here. It wipes the magic marker off right on the outside edge here and on the outside edge here. Looks like it wipes it off on the inside right there. I can't tell on this one. But they're both picking up. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to knock the firing pin out of it and double check it. Maybe I'll get that on camera. Okay, here we are. We got the firing pin is stripped, and I got the go gauge in there, and I just got the bolt. It's, you know, in behind the with the go gauge, and just twisting it by hand. What you want to see is a gap between the top lug and the receiver, so that you know that on the go gauge you're not fully over. So we're engaged in the lugs, and the bolt doesn't rotate fully over where that top lug is touching the receiver. That's what you want to see. So just so you can see, this bolt is stripped, firing pin's out, the extractor's out. It's a strip bolt. So then the way you're supposed to check it is with a strip bolt. You've got the go gauge in there, and there she is. Bring it up, tension, and then she slams home. That's how the Arsenal is too. You bring it up, it hits tension, and then she goes home. Okay, we got a 453 thousandths gauge pin here, and with the no-go gauge in and pushing forward on this thing, I can get 453 thousandths between the carrier and the receiver with forward pressure on this thing. Something I'll record, and then as we get into 1,000 rounds or whatever on this thing, it could be checked and find out what kind of wear we're. Alright, so what I wanted to know is, I want to know how much pressure it takes to go into lockup with the go gauge in there. So what I got is, I got a strip bolt with the go gauge in it, and then I got this push-pull gauge. So what it'll do is it'll look at how much force it takes to close on the so there's 10 pounds right there. There's 11, a little bit more than 11, a little bit less than 12. So it looks like right there was about 11 3/4 pounds to close up on the go gauge. Let's try it again. There's 10 pounds. That one went right around 11. Try it again. 10 pounds again. Right around 11 again. So it takes about 11 pounds, 11 and a half pounds to close on the go gauge. I'm going to take a little bit of material off the rear end of this brake so that when it snugs tight, the locking pin engages at that point. I just think it's better. There's a very slight play on this compared to what the Arsenal was, but why not? It's a quarter of a turn, so it's probably going to be about 14 thousandths off the back side of this thing to get it to lock up right. And I might clean the face of the bolt up a little bit, and that's about it. Okay, I'm ready to start putting this thing back together. Probably let me back it up a little bit here. What I want to say is the muzzle device here, it's been lapped. The rear side of it was lapped so that the timing is perfect, so that when it tightens up against the front sight, the pin, when you finally get it very tight, the pin just pops, you know, at that point. So there's no gap between the front sight and the muzzle device, and the pin engages. The other thing I wanted to show you was that there's some MIM parts in this thing. Like I say, I think the fit and finish on this is above and beyond what Arsenal does. But this does have some MIM parts. One is the safety, this lever that comes over. You can see that that's MIM. One that kind of threw me for a loop here is the extractor is a MIM part. I don't know what's up with that, but you know, it's not a major part, but you would think that they would make that out of steel. Evidently MIM is good. One other thing I did do is I did lap the face of the bolt. This way, if there was any rubbing or anything, that I wanted to be able to spot it by any marks that are left on the face. When I did deburr this corner right here after lapping, I think that this bolt is a little bit harder. The way it felt when I lapped it, and when I deburred this corner, it feels a little bit harder to me than the Arsenal. So I think that Century Arms on the C39V2s is using a harder material for the bolt. I don't know if that's the same, if it's true with the carrier, but just in the way this felt when I was lapping it and cutting this corner with a burr knife, this material is harder than what's on the Arsenal. Maybe that's got something to do with the issues about the problems they're having, or maybe they thought that was the better way to go, and that's what they did. Now, something tells me that, I don't know, well, let's find out, but I don't think the CIP will go in a lockup. Let's find out. All right, here's the CIP. Oh, the CIP gauge does, but it appears that the space, so the bolt does start to go in the lockup, but the space between the lug and the receiver appears to be farther. We can verify that by getting the carrier, and what should happen is we should see that the carrier doesn't go all the way forward. And there you have it. So with a CIP gauge, now this is a go gauge, it will not go in the lockup. I found the same thing true on the Arsenal. CIP gauge would not go in the lockup. but the SAMI does. So here's the SAMI go gauge. There she is. Alright, just in case somebody runs into this, for whatever reason the SAMI gauge is a little bit lesser of a tolerance, or a looser fit, I guess you could say, and it allows the bolt, you know, you can, if you're checking, use your SAMI, and that's going to be, you know, the lowest tolerance. If a CIP, if it closes on a CIP, I can guarantee it'll close on the SAMI. Well, that's what we're finding here. And then obviously the no-go gauge, which is here somewhere. Well, so if it won't close on a go gauge CIP, it's definitely not going to close on the SAMI. And once again, there it is. It's not going to close on a go gauge. Alright, that's it for the go and the no-go. I'm going to put the bolt together now and then assemble this rifle. But that was just some of the numbers. I think fit and finish on the Century Arms is beyond the Arsenal, but the Arsenal, they fit it correctly. I don't know about this receiver, if it's harder than an Arsenal. The Arsenal is supposed to be a forging, and then they machine it out. This is just a block of, I think, 4150 or 4140, and then they just machine it all out. So there you go. There's just some more information.